G'day, it's Adam, VK4GHZ with a K3NG Rotator Controller project update. It's just been released, a firmware version for a 5-inch Nextion screen. Check out this bad boy. Compared to the 3.5-inch, the 5-inch is just bigger and better. The 3.5-inch also gets a firmware upgrade with some of the new 5-inch features. Gentlemen, when it comes to this stuff, 5 inches is big enough. Stick around because I'm going to walk you through a comparison between the 5-inch and the 3.5-inch Nextion. And at the end of the video, I'm going to reveal a little secret trick. Well, it's not a secret, it's hardly a trick, but it does involve this. Stick around, that's coming up. Okay, time to pull the protective layer off the 5-inch for the new firmware release 2021-01-01-01, being the first release on January 1, 2021. Just simply uses the date code. On the splash page, it now tells you the rotator control protocol you've set up in the Arduino features file. I've set up the old 3.5-inch alongside the new 5-inch, so you can easily see the differences on all the pages. The MCU on this board of mine is a Teensy 3.2. Both the transmit data and receive data lines are connected to the 5-inch, whilst the 3.5-inch only has its receive data line connected. So only the 5-inch is fully talking to the MCU, but the 3.5-inch is also receiving the same data. Okay, let's take a look at the main numerals page. Now the 5-inch screen offers you 800 by 480 pixels, so everything can be a little bit bigger. The fonts are larger, the buttons are larger. The buttons on the 3.5-inch screen are 75 pixels wide by 65 pixels high. On the 5-inch screen we've got a bit more room, so they're 100 pixels wide by 75 pixels high. So a little bit more user-friendly. There are sexier clock icons. For instance, even though we have GPS enabled, it's telling me that it's free running because we haven't plugged in the GPS. We'll do that in a second. And because we haven't plugged in the GPS, it's telling me to wait for a fix. So why don't we plug in the GPS now? So that'll take a few minutes for the GPS, which is a U-Blox Neo 6M I'm running here. We can adjust the colours, the colour scheme here if you like, just by touching azimuth. It'll go to this page here. We can change the font. Now if everyone's still running LCD and you like the look of LCDs, we can do this. There we go. Change it to black on green. My elevation, I'm just using the my elevation sensor is still on my bench here. We can also do that to elevation. Let's pick something really disgusting like perhaps green on pink. So you've got full control over the colours. Let's go back to something a little bit nicer. So for elevation, I want that to stand out. Make that say red on yellow. Azimuth, I'll go back to the Calibration font and we can make that say blue on white. Like so. Now these colours will flow through to all your other pages, as we can see here and here and here. But you can only set the colours on the numerals page. You can also change the colour and font of your navigation buttons, which are the top left and top right here. Normally the clock is in the navigation back button, and in the navigation forward button is your grid square. A long press of that and we can change our colour scheme here. Say yellow on, I don't know, yellow on blue, and that even has the LCD font too if you want that, like so. We'll go back to that. Alright, up and down, counterclockwise. The moon and sun tracking, satellite tracking and auto park icons live down here now. Oh, and we've just got the GPS. So it's receiving 4 satellites. This is my location. And as you can see, the clock has changed from free running to GPS synchronization mode now. Presets behave like they did in the past. A short press will send the rotor to that direction. Preset 1 for me, I've given a name tag of VK4RBB and it's sitting at 130 degrees. Now a long press of any of these preset buttons will take you to the preset configuration page. This is where you can enter in the bearing and its name. So for instance, preset 4, currently I've set it to 245 degrees and I've called it Mount Gam for the Mount Gambier beacons. We can change that to, I don't know, let's pick a bearing, 350 degrees. I'll change that, backspace, V. Oh, actually, let's call that Darwin. Hello to everyone in Darwin watching, like so. Now, when you're entering this information in, you've got 6 characters to play with. That's true for grid squares, the preset name tags, and also the user-defined function name tags. Now, as you can see, the benefit of the big screen here, look at the keypad. It's much easier to work with. Just so much better with the fingers. I tend to use these styluses. You can pick these up on eBay for like $1 each or something. Buy a 3-pack for about $4 Australian. Totally recommend these. These just make life so much easier, especially with smaller screens. Not only that, you can use it on your other touchscreen gear, such as an IC 9700. It just helps keep your greasy, grotty finger oil off the screens. So as you can see, the keypad is much easier to work with. There are our 4 presets. Let's take a look at the gauges page. Bigger dial. These from memory were 150 pixels square. These are now 250 pixels square, so bigger, easier to read. Again, we've got our 4 presets here. The icons, our tracking icons, are bottom left. As you can see, the colour scheme flows through to this page. Moon and sun tracking, again the icons and the stop, go to, park buttons all in the same spot, preset buttons all in the same spot for consistency. These fonts here are all larger. This is our satellite tracking page. AO73 is the satellite I've got selected currently. Just go to our satellite list, pick one at random, say AO7, return. And we're expecting acquisition of signal of 1 hour and 16 minutes. We can plot that on the map with a short press. Oh, I should be doing this on this screen at the same time. And we can see the satellite is up here. Let's take a look at the moon and sun tracking pages. Now, as you can see, there's just everything's a little bit bigger. Fonts are larger here. Satellite tracking. At the moment we've got SO50 selected. Short press of that will bring up our satellite list. I've got, what have I got there? 16 satellites. Now a long press of that, we can type in using the keyboard. So if you can't quite remember what the satellite name is, you can partially type it in, enter, and it will do a search and find the closest match, like so. Short press of this box here, oops, will plot where the satellite is. Sometimes, haven't quite figured this out why yet, but sometimes it will plot an X, a marker on the 00. Try and fix that. It's that doesn't always present itself when I'm in debugging, so it can be a little bit hard to track down. So as you can, it could just be a timing issue. As you can see, it didn't appear on the 3.5 inch. No big deal. Now a long press of this box will bring up our next 6 satellites we're expecting to see. CAS4B is currently in view. We'll select that one. Short press here, we'll plot that on the map, and it's just northwest of Tasmania. Now if we let this go over time, you will actually see the satellite's progress. It leaves a trail behind it. Look at the configuration screen. As you can see, it's bigger, has a much bolder look to it now. If we want to enable the more calibration page and the diagnostics page, we simply select them. Default screen it was previously set to numerals, we can set that to gauges, so when we power the system up it'll go straight to the gauges page, and you can also flip the elevation gauge if you want to do that. So what that does, that puts 0 on the right hand side instead of on the left hand side. Screen brightness, fairly obvious. Update rate, this is how quickly it's updating the screen. I should set these to the same. 500 milliseconds. Just go forward. This is our rotor calibration page. I've replaced the warning graphic. It wasn't entirely obvious that it was actually a button. It took you to a warning page. Now that's a button, and it just tells you, be careful what you're doing. To avoid accidents, a long touch is required for these buttons to operate. That's the set button, the manually calibrate button, Initialize EEPROM button, that's new, and the toggle center button, that's also new, and only appears if you set it up for the Yaesu protocol. So new buttons here, Initialize EEPROM. This will initialize the EEPROM, so it'll wipe your satellite TLEs and all your settings. This here will toggle the center between center north and center south. There was a bit of discussion about that. The one thing I find here, I need to set it for center north, even though for my system here it passes through south as the center. So if there's any confusion about that, that's a really easy way to toggle that setting. Diagnostics page. Nope, I've got to enable that here. Diagnostics page, bigger fonts, bigger buttons. So if you want to, say, send your rotor clockwise, you can do that. It reports, and it is going clockwise, and it reports here what code it's sent. I'm just going to stop that. And it's stopped. And to clear that box, you just touch it like that. User-defined functions page. Now, new on the 3.5 inch, you can actually assign these names. So at the moment, as you saw in the previous video, user-defined function 1, user-defined function 2, I've set. This one will toggle the slow start, slow down behavior for azimuth, and user-defined function 2 for my system here will toggle the slow down, slow start behavior for elevation. So if we want to assign these a name, just simply touch the name box and you can type in a name, like enter, like that. Now just remember, the actual function or the code that that's doing whatever you want it to do actually is in the Arduino side. So this is a two-part process if you want to make use of these user-defined functions. So that's new to the 3.5 inch. You can assign names there. We've got the 4 here as well. This is the About page. This reports the Arduino code version. I'm still running 2020-09-1701. I know Goody released an update recently. I've yet to update my system. This tells you the Nextion version, which is 2021-01-01, the first release on that date. And we'll view the features. This will tell you what features you've set up in your Arduino file. Slightly bigger font. Now if we want to manually send our rotor to a specific bearing, just simply touch the box, azimuth. As you can see, bigger keypad. Doesn't actually look bigger, but they are bigger. The fonts are certainly bigger. Say we want to manually send that to 125 degrees, 125, enter. And it will send the rotor to 125 degrees. Now if you want to tinker around with your Nextion HMI in the Nextion editor, on the splash page there is a timer called TMR Ready GSC, and the GSC is the global system capabilities variable. So after 250 milliseconds of the Nextion powering up, it will expect to see the GSC variable, and that's where the screen determines what you've set on your Arduino features file. Now if you can manually override that simply by removing out the comments line there. And as you can see, I've forced GSC to a value of 7,666. Now that equates to Yaesu B protocol. The clock is enabled, the GPS is enabled, moon tracking is enabled, sun tracking, satellite tracking, park and auto park features are enabled. So you can refer to the truth table to work out what number you need to manually enter in for GSC if you want to force it to a specific value to test components on the screen. Alright, I think I've covered everything. I may have, I always have this sneaking suspicion I've glossed over something or I've forgot to mention something, but
No.
let's just go over a few things. On the main gauges page, if you just tap the gauge, you can manually enter a value like we did on the numerals page. So for instance, 136 degrees azimuth, off it goes. Likewise with elevation, if you want to force it up to a particular elevation, 32 degrees, enter. And there goes my linear actuator. You can probably hear that. I'm just going to stop that. So that's pretty much that page. Moon and sun tracking, so the sun is in view, so that button will activate the sun tracking. If the moon were in view, the moon tracking button would appear. It's not in view at the moment. Satellite page we've gone over, configuration screen we've gone over, rotor calibration. Just remember, first thing you want to do is when you're setting your system up initially is to set the end stops of your rotor. So manually go full counterclockwise. You can either use the touch buttons here. The touch buttons here, or you can manually do it on your rotor. Like for instance, if I just do this manually over here, you'll see the screen respond. It's constantly reporting the rotor positions. So you'd send that fully around counterclockwise, short press of full counterclockwise, then a long press of the set button. I'm not going to do it now. Then you'd send your rotor fully clockwise, short press of full clockwise, then a long press of the set button. That will set your end stops. Then for instance, if you wanted to introduce an offset into your azimuth reading, we'd use the manual calibration feature, select azimuth, because you can select elevation, as azimuth, and say we wanted to, that was actually 130 degrees azimuth angle, 130, enter. Now this is a long press of manually calibrate, long press, and where our rotor park now is 130 degrees. And you can do the same thing with elevation. Select elevation box, enter in an angle, enter, long press of manually calibrate. Now the secret little trick. It's not really secret, and there's a bit of a trick involved though. You can actually change the colors and fonts of your preset tags. This is where this comes in. Now you could use, I guess you could use a pencil. I just tend to use these styluses. Just a press of the tag button and you can change the color. So for instance, we'll make that say yellow on black. And all the tags change that color. Once again, that will flow through to all your other pages. You can only set them on the main numerals page. So it's really whatever takes your fancy. Just a short press there. I think white tends to work best. And if you do want it, you do have the option of the LCD font. It's just easier to use a stylus than trying to use your finger. I mean, you can't get it. But you could trigger off the preset. So it doesn't matter which one you touch, you can touch any four of these tags and you can set the colors of all the tags. Alright guys, that's it for now. The firmware for the Nextion for the 3.5 and the 5 inch is freely available from my website, vk4ghz.com. Look for the downloads button up the top. Click on the obvious, that'll take you to the K3NG Rotator Controller page. Scroll down and you'll see the zip packages there. Now I've bundled the TFT and the HMI and all the graphical and font assets in with the zip. So if you want the HMI or the TFT, they're all bundled together. You take your pick on which one you use. If you have no interest in tinkering with the file, you're quite happy with the way it is, the TFT is the easiest to program. You simply unzip it, copy the TFT file onto a micro SD card, pop the card in, power up your Nextion, and it will program power the Nextion down, take the card out, and you're done. If you're using if you choose to use the HMI, you will need to use the Nextion editor to program that with something like an FTDI adapter. All right, we'll see you in the next video. Take care. We'll hope 2021 is a much better year than 2020.